Happy New Year. It's 2024 and we are starting off our podcast season 2, which is super exciting.
Woo!
And we're starting to go with some themes that are happening throughout our In the Cortex business. We're going to bring it into our podcast, just a little hint of it to help our members and also to bring in more of you to keep listening and getting more of the information here we shared in the Cortex. So, today we're talking about a really cool topic about living in alignment. And we talk about this because it's literally the foundation of what we do for In the Cortex.
Pretty much, yeah.
And we did a reconnect before we got on our podcast. And the funny part is I didn't have that in my subconscious, but Paloma did.
I did.
So I was like, well, maybe it's
I'm living in alignment. I'm in alignment. I am aligned. I was like on it for all of it. So
you had it.
listen, what can I say? Sometimes you
Yeah.
just got it. Yeah, so this is
Sometimes.
exciting. I'm happy that we're back. We were just saying that we haven't recorded a podcast in like more than almost no, like a
A
month
month.
and something. It's good to be back, good to be back, good to be back.
Yes.
So yeah, let's talk about alignment. I feel like there's so much that we're going to talk about here. So it's really just going to be kind of a flowy conversation, but I
Mhm.
wanted to think about when we were at the post that we made yesterday on social media that was about that, right? Because that's our theme for
Mm.
January's alignment. And the reason we chose this theme for January is because that's what everybody's looking for, right? When you're starting your resolutions, you want to start your year on the right foot, whatever that means, right? And so
Mhm.
you really want to get yourself set in like, who am I? What do I want to do with my year, with my life? Like, it always feels like this blank slate, and it can be really exciting. It can be very overwhelming, but it can also be
Mhm.
really exciting, right? If you look at it
Mhm.
in kind of like more of a positive mindset, with a positive mindset, you really do have a blank slate. You can do whatever you want. I mean, you started out the year journaling and meditating and doing all these amazing things, right? Like, that's so cool. And it's just cool also to look at past years too and be like, how did I start that year, right? Like, last year at this time, I had the worst back pain I've ever had in my life. You remember, it was an
Mm.
excruciating pain. I couldn't move. I was like crying from the pain every day. And now I'm like chilling like Magellan, recording a podcast with my business partner. So, life, it changes, it flows. And this is definitely a more aligned year for me, that's for sure.
Oh, girl, me too. I feel like, and that's what I was telling you today before we got on and started recording was the alignment came in naturally for me and I didn't have to effort and force it. And that's
Mhm.
because of all the building I've been doing over the years. And so now it's like, okay, now's my time. And this is, if you're a person who's like, I'm kind of over all this resolution talk, it's kind of frustrating hearing all these people talk about this stuff. I'm not there yet. There is the part of like setting a resolution and starting some new habits in winter. It kind of goes against like nature in a
Yes.
sense. Like usually spring is usually a really good time for rebirth and the awakening and all that stuff. So this is kind of like, don't put any pressure on yourself. We're just dropping seeds. We're just giving you info of like, how can you dig deeper? How can you find more meaning and purpose in life
Mhm.
and really finding your authentic self? So
Yeah,
that post yesterday was talking about finding harmony within ourselves and the world around us. That's a part of what it means to live in alignment
exactly.
and really embracing that not everything is beautiful sunshine and rainbows, but you can find the harmony and the beauty within every moment.
And
And
not
it's
everything is for you. Sometimes you're gonna, kind of what you're saying with the resolutions, like some people will be like, oh, I want to start running and I want to start reading 17 books a month and I want to like, there's certain things that you think are going to be aligned with you, and then you try
yeah.
them and you're like, why am I trying so hard to do this thing that I shouldn't be doing? Or like, people will start to eat a certain way, like, I don't know, so keto, whatever you want, whatever it
Mhm.
is. If that's
Mhm.
not something that's aligned with your body and your brain, it's going to be really, really hard to keep it. So it's also about discernment, right? Really,
Yes.
truly understanding. Well, we'll talk about the boundaries as well, but understand, just being able to discern what does align with you, what is in harmony with who you are, and what isn't, and in your
Oh,
world, right? Like,
yeah.
you have certain things that you do in your life that you're practically on a
Mhm.
farm, and that I can't do because I'm in the middle of a massive city. And the opposite is true as well, right? Like it's
Oh
just,
my gosh, 100%. Yeah, we had a
yeah,
coyote running through our front yard
right.
this morning. I was like, like, where are we? Yeah,
Exactly.
100%. And that's I love because Paloma and I couldn't be more opposite in everything that we do. But we work so well together because we are opposites and we are able to find that harmony within our relationship. And
There
it's
you
just a
go.
beautiful balance between us of like she sees things that I don't, I see things that she doesn't. It's great.
Yeah.
So I love that. Living authentically in a space that just brings you to feeling good. That's what our main message is always at In the Cortex is
Always.
the whole point of what we ask people to do about organizing their brain, reorganizing their brain is to just feel better, to
Yeah.
be able to approach life with less anxiety, no anxiety,
Yeah.
with the feeling of I am who I am, or I'm on my way to becoming more of who I want to be
Hmm.
and embracing the process of it, taking off the layers that aren't you. And then
Yes.
the whole time you're just like, I'm feeling good. And I get up from my brain sessions and I'm like, at brain sessions, I mean creeping, crawling, doing the reflex integration. I just feel so good. I feel like I now can be the parent I always wanted to be.
Hmm.
And I don't have to effort. I think that's the biggest
That's the
piece is I
biggest piece,
don't have to
always.
effort and try. And there's so many amazing people on social media today that are giving so many great tips. And if you're living in your pawns, which is your survival brain, you can literally listen to those tips in the cortex, be like, that's great. I'm going to totally apply that. The minute you are hit, and I'm speaking to parents right now, the minute you are fatigued and tired and your kid's having a meltdown, you don't have access to that information. It's all out the window. And then you're now
Exactly.
screaming at them. So, our
Exactly.
program, because I live this is literally my piece of living in alignment, is doing the work on me, doing my brain work every single day so I
Yeah.
can live an aligned life and I can find the harmony of living with my children and remembering I'm the adult, I'm the modeler, I'm the person who's showing them how to be regulated.
Yep.
And I can't ask that of them if I can't do it to myself. And
Totally.
I think that's the theme of 2024 when I look at all my mom friends posting on social media. And even that post you reposted
Oh yeah.
on our stories of like how
That
they
was
just
pretty good.
handled a calm moment with their child without getting dysregulated. I think there's so many more amazing parents that are starting to realize, like, oh my gosh, all of my dysregulation was from my childhood, and that's all my wounding, and my kids are bringing it out in me.
Oh, I agree. I think it's also like a generational thing
Yes,
where our parents, like we're millennials, and our parents and everybody before them were just pushing down all their feelings and all the things and trying to adapt themselves to, you know what I'm going to say, society's expectations. It's
every time.
true, right? They like I was watching Downton Abbey, okay? And
Okay.
they show these like scenes of like the kids in the schools and they're all like super well behaved and they get in line and they do this. And I was like, there's no way all those kids were able to do that naturally. Like I was thinking back to like actually 1914. There's no way. Like they were just having to try so, so hard. And everybody was like hiding all of their stuff because they didn't want it to come out into the open. And now it's the opposite where we're all like,
Mm,
this is me, right? What's that song? This is
authentic.
real. This is me. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be now.
Ooh,
Demi
who is
Lovato,
that?
baby girl.
Oh,
Camp Rock. But like
it's like I've never heard
you're
that.
like, what?
She's the
But
younger millennial, by
I'm
the
a
way.
younger millennial, you're an elder millennial. But yeah, I think it's also like because this is the generation that's also becoming parents right now. And so it's
Mm,
just changing the way that everybody approaches everything.
hmm.
Like you look at it in parenting, but I look at it with my friends. Like you know
Yeah.
this, we have a WhatsApp group with all my friends. We're all
Yeah.
trying to like manifest new things and like become the best version of ourselves. And we're talking
Yeah.
about this stuff. And that's the cool piece because it's now okay with society to like
Yes.
find who you are authentically and find your values and truly pursue that. And
Yeah.
now the only thing that's getting in the way is your survival
Your
brain,
brain.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
before it was everything. Like it was
Everything.
pressure
Yeah.
from your parents, from society, from having to do this, having to do that, whatever. So now the cool piece is that one layer is gone everywhere, or it's going, and I pretty much gone in my life and in yours.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, they're still peeling it off, right?
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
next piece is just getting to the brain work. And the important part about getting to the brain work is when you get your brain out of survival mode is when you're truly able to understand your values, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
before you might think like I'm trying to think of an example of when you and I were still like pre-brain work. You'll probably come up with one faster
Oh,
than I will. But like things that you thought were priorities to you and things that you thought
yeah.
you were aligned with. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're like, what? Why did I think that
Why?
way?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
You evolve, like everything has a time and place, and there's a season for every time in your life, and you have to just embrace every moment of like this could be a rock bottom moment for a lot of people where they're
yeah,
like, I can't see my way out. When you talk about alignment, that is so not
far
something that's in my
away.
vocabulary. I don't even know what
Totally.
that means, and I don't even know what the first step is. And our first step is always just get on the floor and create, because that is literally creeping your way to a better life. Is
Totally.
everything just gets easier. And when people, and this is an important thing to say, because as we always say, when you're in your cortex, you're in alignment. You are able to respond to the situation for what it is. You're not distorting it. You're not turning things into like, people said this, and then you're interpreting it as like, oh, that means
Mm-hmm.
that there's something wrong with me and being a victim and all this stuff. When you start to creep and develop your brain, you are in alignment, because now someone can say something to you and you can just say, nope, that's not mine. That's yours. And I don't
Exactly.
have to take offense to it anymore.
Yes.
And when people question that, we just had a member say this on our last office hours, but now we call them cortex chats, by the way. That's a new 2024 term. Um, she said, when you guys kept saying like things are going to change, you're going to change, I didn't know what that meant because I've
Yes.
never changed. I've only known myself for so long. And then I started doing my brain work, and when I finally realized by change, you meant get rid of the stuff that's not serving me, and
Mm-hmm.
it just goes away naturally. Because all the things that aren't serving you, like anxiety, it's a way that your brain's compensating. It's trying
Yes.
to make things happen to help you think you're getting in alignment, right? And then you realize like, but wait, me fearing every moment or overthinking every moment isn't actually helping me. It's actually hurting me, because then it's stopping me dead in my tracks. And then we go,
Mm,
yeah, that's not the real version of who you really authentically want to be. And you're not living in
absolutely.
harmony.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's also can create, I mean, if you're living in your survival brain, you're living in fear all the time. And so
All the time.
fear can create so many distortions also in the way that you look at the world, right? And look at yourself and like what you value and what you prioritize and what you care about. And so that's where I think a lot of it starts to shift. So it's also like,
Mm-hmm.
why do I care about certain things? Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where does it kind of come into my life, right? And how am
Yeah.
I able to kind of make those things go together? And also, I think a really important thing is like being able to understand that it's never going to be linear and you're never
Mm-mm.
always going to be on the same track. And I think that's what's like the toxic culture is right now about resolutions and all the toxic positivity and stuff.
Mm.
If you're somebody like you were saying who's entering this year with fear, being like, life is so hard, how am I supposed to do this? Then you're already like, oh, something wrong with me, right? I'm not going
Well,
to be
it's
able to do it.
self-sabotage. That's the
Exactly.
self-sabotage. And that's another part of our program we really address, is that there's the subconscious is insanely powerful.
Yes.
It's 95% in charge of just your day-to-day living. Like you're doing things you're not even aware of. And we've all experienced those moments where we say something and you stop yourself. You're like, where did that just come from?
Yeah.
That's not me. And
Yes.
I'm really like, we were just talking about this too right before we got on, was my money thing. My money and my lack mindset of like money has been my like my nemesis. I have to crack it,
Yeah.
like it's something that I have spent so much time of just like peeling back the layers. But at the same time, I'm not beating myself up anymore. I just go, oh my gosh,
Right.
isn't that so interesting? Like, oh,
Yes.
here's another layer to go dive deeper on. Like, why we were just talking about how I love a good deal. Like, I love bargains. I love to find a good deal.
Bargains are
And
good.
then and then Paloma's like, let's give out coupon codes like she's Oprah. Like, you get a coupon code, you get a coupon code, everyone gets a coupon. I was like, Paloma, we got to value ourselves, right? And so I'm like, there's a part that we just made that connection of like, why can I go get discounts, but then I don't want other people to get discounts on our program? And I'm like, okay, there's a cool
There's something there.
subconscious to dive into. And that's the whole thing, is it's not linear. I can't just do what we call a reconnect. I can't just do one reconnect of I am abundant and I live an abundant life and then I'm done. I grew up with programming from my mom and dad that money is hard to come by and you
Mhm.
have to budget. And I think a lot of us did, by the way, because
Of
they had
course.
parents that were in the Great Depression, that, it's all that
Yes.
generational stuff we passed down. And so I'm just becoming more aware of like, I need to release and allow the money to flow, but I have to be able to give in order to receive. It's this whole balance, right? And I know
Exactly.
it's not linear,
And
and I'm
and
okay with
that's where
that.
holding space comes, right? Like being able to
Right.
open up that space for yourself or for somebody else, right? When you know
Mhm.
that they're also on this path, and being able to just be like, okay, this is not the moment for this one specific change or this one specific area of my life. We were just talking about that on office hours too, where I had like a list of reconnects that I had to do about my body image for 3 years. And I was like, I'm
Mhm.
just not ready. And then I
Right.
did them, and now I'm starting to work through them. And I'm like, this wasn't that scary, but part of me just was not ready for it before. And I know I would not have been
Right.
able to work on that in 2020 when I was had just moved to Barcelona. Like it just would not have happened, you know? There was just too much
100%.
going on in my life, and it was just too near, and I knew it was going to be too painful in that moment, right? To look at that stuff.
And look at what we just did though. Like this was a big catalyst for us. We overhauled our program. We made it so much more amazing. And we then were like, we got to commit to doing it.
Right,
We
exactly.
committed to doing our own program. Haha, that's funny. Like, duh. Because I mean, we've done brain work for years and then we took a
But
break
not
and
in
then
that way.
we didn't commit to the daily 20 minutes for like the full 12 modules.
Exactly.
And as soon as I committed to it, I was like, oh my gosh, I love the person I am becoming. Like,
Yeah.
I need this because I am a regulated parent. And now that I can actually just like see my daughter and go, I'm gonna give you a hug, even though you're telling me all these yucky things at 4 years old. I'm still gonna just be like, I can show you regulation. And I couldn't do it before. I couldn't because it was triggering my brain to go, oh my gosh, this is forever. Anyways, the point is we did our brain work. We started organizing our brains. We started coming out of survival mode. And then your
Yes.
brain was like, okay, wait, no, I'm ready to do this now because it's not that
Exactly.
scary. And
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever actually said that out loud of like, that those there were so many of those moments for both of us by doing the daily brain work that got us to now look at our subconscious, start holding boundaries. Everyone talks about boundaries,
Boundaries.
boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And we're like, and I had the realization maybe a month ago, I was like, but I didn't grow up with healthy boundaries. So I
Yeah.
don't even know how to do that.
Right.
And so now I'm learning how to have boundaries. And the biggest part for me, what I realized of why boundaries were so hard was because I just wanted like certain people to like me and I just
It's like
wanted to
more like
give
a
them
people pleasing. Yeah. Yeah.
access to me all the time. And I'm like, oh, the more that I'm
Oh,
like
right.
there and being the martyr and like doing all these things, and then I'm like building all this resentment underneath, like, wait, why aren't they
Yes.
appreciating me? Once I had that
And as
aha,
projectors, that's a big one,
right.
being appreciated and recognized.
100%.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Wait, I'm actually good if you don't like me." And then as
Yeah.
soon as I voiced that and held boundaries, then the people who are benefiting from me not having boundaries just slowly started fading away.
Yeah. That's a thing.
Isn't that they say that all the
It's
time.
very clear. I mean, I don't think I have a boundary challenges in that sense. My boundaries are more with like myself, like behavior,
Mm,
because I got everything I wanted when I was very spoiled. And so not having
mhm.
absolutely everything I want and being perfectly comfortable in every single way for
Right,
me is like not easy. And so that's more my
right.
boundary of like, hey, like sometimes you have to put limits for your own, well-being. But
Right.
I think like I've seen it with so many friends where the second they start to set boundaries, people are just like like angry at them. And they'll be like, I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Where I'm like, don't stop what you're doing. Keep going. You're setting a boundary. Get rid of this toxic person who is benefiting from them. And nobody's inherently toxic. That toxic person
Mm-mm.
that's benefiting from your lack of boundaries also has challenges with that and grew
Mhm.
up with the opposite probably. So they need somebody who doesn't have any boundaries so they can like latch onto that, you know? I mean,
Mhm.
it's always very, it's not nobody's inherently bad. It's just
No.
like that, but these are definitely personalities that find each other. That would be a cool podcast to do.
Yeah.
But different personality types
Well, that's what they
always
say.
end up finding each other.
Well, and that's too true about like just like dating and being in relationships with
100%.
like, intimate relationships, I guess, or even friendships to any relationship, quite
Any,
honestly,
yeah.
is there's like something and more so you see it like because I can experience this in my own intimate, like, romantic relationships of like, okay, that person really emulated these characteristics of this person when I was growing up. And then when I'm
Exactly.
in this relationship, I think I can like fix it or do something different to
Yeah.
heal the wounds from my childhood. And, it's so funny because the more that you learn boundaries and how to then find out about that, having the awareness, when you have
Yes.
the awareness around that, and then you can start to say, okay, wait, how is this serving me? Is this
Yes.
serving me? Is this
Is this
bringing me into
aligned?
alignment?
Yes.
Is this harmony? Is this authentically who I want to be? And then you start to say,
Absolutely.
like, no. And the coolest thing, because of my brain work, I'll say it a million times, because of my brain work, I now can just get triggered, and you're gonna obviously always be triggered for the rest of
Yeah.
your life because you're
That's just
human and
life.
you have
Yeah.
emotions. But the difference in how you handle the trigger is everything, right?
Yeah.
So now I just go, ooh, I didn't like how that felt. And I can just feel
Yes.
myself. Like I was just telling you, I literally just walked away from a situation. I didn't expect anyone. And that was something I heard someone say recently on Instagram. When you set a boundary, it's about you taking charge of a situation, not expecting someone else to change and do anything.
Right.
And
Yes.
so, and that's where like true peace comes in. And that's where you find that true alignment, authenticity, because
Hmm.
I can go take care of me. I can go change me and control what I'm feeling and doing. I can't have any bearing on this person. But if they want a relationship with me, I'm going to share my feelings and tell them where I'm
Exactly.
coming from, and then leave it like unattached. You do what you want with that, right? Like if
Hmm.
you want to help support me and nurture and guide me, then this is going to keep going. If that is like, I just hit a wound in you, and now we're both sitting here wounded and we don't know how to move forward and we can't get through it, then that's also a moment where you just go, okay, well, do we want to work through this? Is this
That's what I was
relationship
gonna
worth
say. Yes,
it?
exactly. Is it worth it? And also, like, is it the right time? You got to go back to the right
Yes.
time. Because sometimes we were talking about how people will say, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. And it's
Mm,
like,
I
actually,
don't.
we do have time for pretty much everything. Like, if you look at
Yeah.
time and like, first of all, time is an illusion, but we're not going to go down that. But if you look at the hours that you have in the day and how you've spent them,
Ugh,
every single day you can look back and be like, could have done this one thing that I've been avoiding,
yeah.
right? So it's
Hmm.
more about something not being important to you right now. So if you get
Exactly.
to that point where you have that trigger and you have that situation with somebody and you're not going to work on it, then it's just not important to you right now. That's fine.
Yeah.
Leave it for
That's
when it
okay.
is, or go your separate ways, right? Or whatever it might be,
Yes.
whatever boundary you need to set with that person.
I love that. And there's another line we recently just heard. There's two of them. So it's like, bend so you don't break. And I love
Right.
that, you can prioritize and make it so like, I'm going to make this a priority in my life, and I'm going to put the time in here and
Hmm.
have the uncomfortable conversation to save us down the road, right? Because if you don't have those uncomfortable conversations and prioritize that and bend a little bit, like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Sorry, I got to lean in right now. If
Hmm.
you don't do that, then you end up breaking,
You hold it
literally
all in and then
break down or maybe break through. I don't know. It depends on how things turn out for you. But there's so much of life that if you can't bend and you can't be flexible and see that in the moment, then getting into alignment's really hard, right?
and
Because
that
no.
flexibility comes
Mhm.
with an organized brain.
100%.
Can't have cognitive flexibility when you're in survival mode.
No.
Everything has to be black and white.
Rigid, black and
Everything's
white, yes.
rigid. You're controlling things. You think everything has to be a certain way. And this
Yes.
is also going to like smaller things like, oh, my New Year's resolution is to work out more. And you get to January 3rd and you're like, oh no, I didn't go to the
Mm.
gym yesterday. I don't think I'm gonna have time today. Bend. Be like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
not going these 2 days, but I will go tomorrow. There you go.
100%.
Like
And
bend your
keep
with
going.
yourself too. Exactly. Because that's
Keep
also that
going.
all or nothing thinking is
Yes.
so common. That's why the fitness industry makes millions of dollars in the beginning of the year and then it dips in like
Plummets.
February because
Yeah.
everybody's like, they break, right? They're like, nope, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be 100% perfect at going to the gym every single day for
Well,
3 hours.
it's
So I'm just gonna quit.
self-sabotage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
a
self-sabotage,
self-sabotage.
of course, but it's also
This
the
yeah,
self-sabotage coming from our primitive brain. It's
right,
coming from
100%.
our want to survive, our need to survive.
Mhm. Okay, so right now in our book club, we're reading this book called The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller, and I'm #obsessed. And I mean, I've read it before, but I'm reading it again, and it's amazing. Obviously, anytime you reread anything, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, look at all these new things to glean. And there was a guy, I even highlighted his name. I will drop it into the show notes and make sure that we bring that to you. But he was like the first psychologist who was like the doctor of like positive thinking. And
Mm.
where does that come from? And being able to have that, like you just said, that ability to see the positive in situations is something that is a learned response, and you normally learn it from growing up in childhood. Like, did you grow up
Mhm.
with people who are constantly seeing the negative? And we already
Totally.
know, we've said this many, many times, is when your brain's in survival, it is supposed to find what's wrong. That is a
Yes.
survival mechanism. So if you walk into a restaurant and it's really busy, see, I knew it was going to be so busy. Like, it's always so busy, versus a positive brain who goes, oh, hey, I'm going to be patient. And I know that the right table will show up when it's meant to be,
And
right?
it's
And you're
busy because it's
mhm,
delicious. I'm so excited to eat
whatever.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So the positive brain can see it in a completely different light. And so there's so much of our programming that we actually have to override and work towards.
Absolutely.
But again, and this is why we have our program set up the way it is you cannot come out of, you can't go into that positive mindset, because then you get into toxic positivity where you pretend like
Yes.
everything's really good and you're like,
And you're like, yeah,
everything's
no."
fine. I'm great. How are you? And you're like, I know that not everything is fine, you know?
Yeah.
And this isn't to shame anybody. This is just to highlight that, like, we can't override it. Like, it has to be something that we do from the root
And
and
that's
get to the root
where
of it.
the yeah, and that's where holding space comes in. If you know somebody who
Mm,
is in that mode and they can't get out of it, they're in that toxic positivity, they're refusing to acknowledge that stuff is not
yeah.
okay. Like you just said, instead of
Yeah.
judging them, just be like, dude, I'm gonna hold space for when they're ready.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be able to, I'm gonna help them work through this, or I'm gonna be there to support them, whatever your relationship is with that person, right? Instead of being
Mhm.
like, oh, this, annoyed by this person who won't open their eyes and look at, things in a way that's gonna help them grow,
Mhm.
being like, okay, well, they're just not ready for it right now, but I'm gonna hold that space for them and not judge them.
Exactly.
It's
And
just their brain.
holding space is really just this place of being able to kind of like send people love. And this one,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it took me a while to get to this, because I think when I learned about brain reorganization over 14 years ago, I was like, everyone just needs to creep and crawl and there'll be no problems left in the
Yeah.
world. Like, we would be fine. We would have no egos, like running the show. It'd be great. And then I was like, okay, the harder I screamed it at people, the more that they like ran away from
They're
me. So I
like,
was like,
bye.
okay, let's
Yeah.
try a new approach, Danny. Okay, cool. I'll just like do a podcast and
Yeah.
talk it here, and then people can just like turn it off, right? If you're not into it. But
Exactly.
please leave us positive reviews if you do enjoy it. But so once you realize, like, I'm somewhere that I'm super authentically good and I'm happy, and you
Yes.
can be the light of that, and right, you want people to come and join you, versus telling them to and begging them to, just
Yes.
be you, authentically you. Send them love, whether it be pray, meditate, energetically, like, think that loving thought for them, and then just surrender to, there is going to be a light at the end of this
A
tunnel, and
hundred
it's
percent.
your journey of getting to discover that light.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be here to hold that regulated space for you.
Hmm.
And sometimes, like, for example, for my 4-year-old, holding space literally is me picking up and holding her and hugging
Yeah.
her. And she then like needs to like kind of give me like a little sniff and is like, oh, okay, I got you. That's like her way of like regulating, and like me regulating immediately. I will tell you, it's a little harder to hold space for adults, because you're like, you're an adult. Like, why are you just
It's
get it?
harder.
But you
Yes.
still need to do it.
But you still have to do it. I want to think of an example of how you're able to kind of hold that space with adults, because of course that's more my life. I'm thinking of recently I had a thing with like a friend where we had a group chat and we were all like trying to figure out what to do one day. And one of them had like a very strong opinion what we wanted to do, what she wanted to do. And none of us wanted to. And so I was the one that spoke up and was like, hey, listen, I'm not into this. I'm pretty sure everybody else is also not into this, but let's do something different. And she like, separately got mad at me because I was the one that spoke up, right?
Mhm.
And I was just like, I'm, sorry, I'm here for you. I want to see you that day. It's going to be so much fun, but this is just not a thing that I'm going to
Mhm.
do. I'm not participating in it because I held my boundary very strongly. And I mean, she was annoyed for like 20 minutes, and then because I knew it was going to work out, it always works out. And so I
Right.
was 20 minutes later, we had a different plan. We were all happy. And she was like, hey, that was, I'm not mad anymore. Like, sorry. And I was like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But it's also kind of like, because I was not emotional about it, we were
That's
able to kind of keep that. Yeah.
And I think being able to stay calm in those places. So, okay,
Yes.
that's perfect. Exactly that. So there's conflict. Conflict is inevitable. Every relationship is going to have
Always.
conflict, right? That's how we figure out who each other are. That's how we get deeper into relationships. And every relationship is a risk. Like we never know how things are going to go, right? And so every time you engage in something, you're like, "Oh, well, there's fear behind it," right? And so
Mhm.
there's always that emotion of like, I don't know how things are going to land.
Mhm.
And so if you can enter anything with a calm demeanor and a
Yes.
knowing of it's going to be okay. Like we
Because you know
can,
it's gonna be
it
okay.
always
Like,
is, right?
yeah.
Do you need to go through the whole cycle of all the drama every time? Hopefully not, right? Because
No.
that's very exhausting. But sometimes relationships need like that little shake up of like, whoa, you just really hit a core wound to me, and that wound then hit your core wound. And now we're both sitting here wounded, but it's not,
Yes.
it's the same experience, but we're in a different perception of it, right?
Exactly.
And so like I can voice to you why I'm feeling this, and I have accountability for like, okay, now here's I'm going to go handle so I
Mhm.
don't keep showing up and feeling like my security is being rattled. And I can tell that your validation is the reason that my security is being rattled.
Mhm.
And then it's like, okay, now how do we work through this? And this is a skill that is not easy. It's not learned in school. It's not taught in school, I should
Should
say.
be, yeah.
It's not something that my parents ever did. It was more so one parent got upset, the other parent shut down,
Yeah.
right? And then it eventually just like emotions finally calmed down, but we never talked about it and got to the root
Dude,
of it.
yes.
And we just
Same.
and then it would keep circling, right? And so I think that's my new boundary on relationships is like I'm so down to get triggered with you, but can you work all the way through it and
Yep.
like resolve it so we don't keep having the same trigger over and over?
Over
Because
and
most
over again.
marriages and relationships always end because, oh, he was this and she was this. The same thing, right? And
Yeah.
they can't get past it. So that's why we think that this work is just so important to help you get into alignment and to really focus on how do you find the most authentic version of yourself? And that's
Yes.
doing the brain work. We'll
Doing the
say it
brain work,
every
baby girl. There's
yeah,
so many other things you can do, and if you want to do them, but start with the brain always. And we will
every
always
time.
shout that from the rooftops.
Every
Um,
time.
but yeah, that was our episode for today. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, share this episode or your favorite episode with your friends. It really helps us to get the word out. And we are so grateful to all of our listeners already because you have helped us get to way more people than we ever thought we would. And it's just going to
Yeah.
continue growing. So we're excited about that. And remember to follow us on social media. It's Instagram is in the cortex underscore US. TikTok is in underscore the underscore cortex. Our Facebook is in the cortex US. Our website is in the cortex.com. Our email is hello at inthecortex.com. And now we're doing video podcasts, so you can also check out our YouTube channel if you're more of a video oriented person. And remember, if you want to sign up for our program, you can get $10 off your first payment of our program with promo code Brainiac. And thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time.
Bye.